Oh, from New York, New York, you are listening to Extra Time, driven by Continental Tire from the AT&T 5G Virtual Studios. I'm Andrew Wiebe with my partners in soccer, Kalen Carr, David Goss. How you feeling, boys? Well, Championship Monday. I mean, for certain listeners of the show, I guess the Canadians out there are like, wait, not us, not yet. Maybe we will be soon. For the El Tri fans, no, not you, not for the second time this summer, but for the U.S. men's national team fans, this summer has been perfect. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. We did the whole recap show. You can go listen to that where we get podcasts or on YouTube. Now that you've had 10 hours to perhaps sleep, perhaps not, depending on how you chose to watch the U.S. women go down in the Olympics. How are you feeling, Kalen?
Feeling great. Yeah, I feel like it's been the group chat has been lively, mainly showing like clips of Mexican media and former players melting down, which has been pretty fun to watch and probably
Hugo
expected.
Sanchez, always right on time. There's nothing more consistent than Hugo Sanchez questioning a Mexican coach the moment they lose a game.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Fubo Conte was like, "All right, Hugo, this is your moment, man. How are you gonna
go.
do this? Choose
Yeah,
your words."
go for it. Yeah, so that was pretty entertaining. I guess like it's tempered because it's bummed by the U.S. Women's National Team, but I kind of felt like I was bracing for that in a way, as far as just them not finding their footing or their form. And now it's like, all right, well, what's the next iteration for them? What young players are they going to come through next and bring into maybe as like kind of like forced to in a way because I think the average age of this team was over 30, which is not normal, right?
Yeah, I mean, average age of extra time is barely more, which tells you that's a bad sign. That's a bad sign for any professional
Yeah,
soccer
I don't
team.
know. Their accolades probably outweigh ours, but
That's fair. That's a good point.
well, we did have a good performance actually with Brooke Hatton last week. I guess played
Nice.
on Goss's team. He didn't show; he was a no-show. But yeah, Sam
I,
Stachel was there, and we had Stelly and some
I'm
others. So
more of an age. I'm more like wheeling dealing. Like once I sign you, Kalen, I don't
yeah,
need to go because I've already put Kalen in midfield, so I don't need to be there.
yeah.
What do you guys
But
think
anyways,
of?
overall, like I mean, super positive though. It's still buzzing from the men's team performance last night, and just the whole summer. It was just awesome. Like it's just been a really great run, and for so long we've been pretty down. You know, I remember a
Yeah,
lot of nights in the studio together, just kind of feeling like, oh man, like, what are we even gonna say about this one? You know, it's just like, and now you're like, all right, let's go. Like I can't wait for the next match. I can't wait for qualifiers to begin, and feeling super hopeful about being involved looking towards the World Cup.
who's the star of the show in the post game celebrations? Is it Reggie Cannon
Re-
trolling Gianluca Busio over Venezia? Is it, I mean, the like club shots that we got with the trophy on the stage and bottle service?
I
Uh,
think Paul Areola, Sebastian Lletget did a little bobsledding on a pool of beer in the locker room, which was pretty strong. So that's pretty strong as well. But to Kalen's point, like it's been a lot of years of people texting you, why did the US lose this game? What's the US doing? And then you have to explain what's going on. And then you got to go back to Greg Berhalter's 2016 playoff matchups and his style. And everything was this whole thing. And now it's like they've won things, they're good. That's a really quick explainer. And then for me personally, just thinking about it over the last 10 hours, as you said, obviously we're the official show of MLS. So I'm going to say this, but the hand that MLS played in developing these players and the way the youth development has changed. And it's not everything, right? Matt Turner, as we've talked about, started playing soccer later, came out of college, as did Miles Robinson as a GA. I still think for the US forever, you're going to have to pull players from every piece because it's such a big country, and that's just a reality. But the amount of these players that I saw play as youth players at Generation Adidas Cup for MLS academies and then sign homegrown deals that were a key part of what happened yesterday in Kellen Acosta and Reggie Cannon, in James Sands, is awesome. And that's really exciting for me. And I think that the group of players coming through is even stronger than what we have now. It's why I don't believe it's a golden generation. I think this is the future. And there was questions, and as Kalen said, dark times over the last 3-4 years with US men's soccer and what was going to happen. And I felt the whole time we were in the right path. We just had to see it happen. I think it's happened a little quicker than I thought it would, which is amazing because it takes so much pressure off the next generation, off the coaching staff, to not have to push people through too early. Because now you've got a core of guys that are going to be your veterans for the next 10 years or so that everyone else can sort of filter into.
And by the way, an army of guys behind them who are maybe in the academies now, maybe signing their first professional deals, maybe just starting to play professionally. They're saying, veteran core, watch out, I'm coming. Like
Yes.
you better hope to hold on to that spot long term.
FC Dallas has won back-to-back games. Ricardo Pepi had a hat trick. Paxton Pomykal scored an unreal goal, and Jesus Ferreira scored a stunner. And we're not even talking about them because you've got a full national team too of young players who are performing. Like it used to be, if Paxton played 65 minutes, that was the homegrown show for us. And that's what we were excited about. Now we're talking about 2 championships in CONCACAF of young American players. And those guys are back with Dallas and they're still getting it done. Like this is so different than what it's been the last few years.
Yeah, the depth chart is crazy. I was looking at it this morning. It's awesome. We'll see what happens come September, October, and November. That's when the real work begins. We know what the goal is. It's go to a World Cup. It was painful to not see the U.S. there, and that's the goal for Canada and for Mexico as well, and everybody in CONCACAF in that octagonal. We'll see what happens with Tata Martino. Maybe the timing here good for Atlanta United. I don't know if a reunion's coming there, but they are certainly looking for a head coach.
I saw some other clubs talking. Oh, if Tata gets let go, I wouldn't.
Yeah,
I wouldn't
just everybody's
mind.
like waiting, like vultures,
Yeah.
vultures. Just like, hey, is that animal down and done, or like is it still twitching? Can I go pick at the corpse here? Yeah. Like other big news. 8 days until Leagues Cup. No, I'm just kidding. But we'll talk about that more in the upcoming shows because August 10th is the opener on those. That's a Tuesday. I'm going to try
Can I
to get tickets in
sidebar on
Kansas
you
City.
for 1 second?
Sure.
I think that when you watched last night's game and you look at James Sands, I think of Eric Williamson in this as well. Kellen Acosta, but he's played at the national team. Where you will get CONCACAF experience now is CCL and Leagues Cup. Like that's one of the values of those competitions is for these guys who aren't going to get runouts because this cycle and now the next cycle, because we're hosting, there isn't a qualifier against Bermuda or Bahamas that we know we're going to win 8-0 and guys get their CONCACAF debut. Like that's where you're going to learn this style and level of competition to bring in. And so I think of Williamson playing against Club America. I think of James Sands now having 2 tournaments of CCL to be a little bit of that CONCACAF experience. That's why this is key. That's why Leagues Cup is huge. Look at these Seattle kids. Like these young players are going to play against a Liga MX side, understand a little bit. Yeah, the Giants, understand a little bit the gamesmanship, understand a little bit the style of play, all those things, if they were to then debut for the national team.
All right, coming up in today's show, we've already talked about so much. Corey Baird, he's traded. LAFC are making moves. They're acquiring a lot of allocation money. They have yet to announce that center forward we've been talking about for a while. As we said, Atlanta United got a coaching search. The update is that they may have gotten denied. So we'll talk about that. Viernes to Football was Viernes to Football, a.k.a. it was insane. And the Revs are still rolling on that Supporter Shield march. We'll talk about all things of the weekend. Be sure to check out MLSsoccer.com. Charlie Boehm has the 3 Gold Cup final takes that you need. Greg Seltzer has the player ratings. Tom Bogert has a piece on Jamiro Montero. He has got some transfer rumors surrounding him. We'll talk about that in a second as well. And Jason Lemire had your Saturday takeaways. And, of course, if you want more on the U.S. and Mexico in that Gold Cup final, we have all of that wherever you listen to podcasts. So we put out that as a standalone episode. We'll focus on MLS today. And we will start with the team that they say we never talk about or love or give credit to. NYCFC with a statement week 4-1 win against the Crew. SmackDown, right after they smacked down Orlando City. They have been inconsistent, let's say, this year. It's been up and down. They're still sitting 4th. They're on 26 points. They're 10 back of the Revs, but everybody is basically 10 back of the Revs. They are 3rd in the conference on points per game, and the team that's ahead of them, that's not the Revs, Orlando, again, it was a 5-0 working this week as well. What was this statement, Dave? Like, what is this statement? We always say, oh, is this a statement game? Well, what did they say? What did they prove? What is different?
2 things. 1, when their attack is on, they are one of the best teams in MLS. And 2, that these young attackers can do that. Right? So it's 2 stages. It's, well, what does NYCFC need to do to prove that they are an MLS Cup contender? The back line is not the issue. They have one of the best center back pairings in MLS. This is without James Sands. They're one of the deepest teams.
And Sean John, by the way.
And Sean John. Barraza has been phenomenal over the last few games. And they're one of the deepest teams at defensive midfield with Alfredo Morales, Keaton Parks, Acevedo, Sands as well, all those options. The question was, could they finish? And excitingly, they've relied on a lot of young pieces around Maxi Morales. Jesus Medina is still a young player, but then they bring in all these Brazilians and they have Tati Castellanos up top. So the question was, could those guys be consistent enough and finish for them to be the team that we think they can be when the attack's flowing. And the statement of the week was yes, against an Orlando team that's one of the favorites in the Eastern Conference, and against a Columbus team that I picked to win Supporters Shield coming into the season. So they did it in a huge way. They did it with a lot of different players hitting form. And Eber came on to the broadcast and did an interview and sounds like he might be close as well. So there's relief coming, there's support coming, and the young players have shown that it's not all for the future with them, that they can win now in this league. And if that's the case, then NYCFC are cup contenders.
Little revenge game for them. They lost 2-1 to the Crew on July 17th. So they turned that around. Tati Castellanos gets a goal in this one. That's what they're looking for him to do more than just unbalance teams and be a terror with his movement and his ability to play make. He's got to finish some of those chances. He did. When you get Eber back, it changes everything once again. But now how do they elevate? Because you bring Sands back in. You bring back in Sean John. You're even more set in the back, Kalen. Like, what to you is the ceiling for this team? Like, we're starting to see it, but they're still sitting mid-table of that sort of playoff group in the East. How high can they rise?
Well, I think now is a really good time for them to climb, because the way this team is set up, too, from the depth and the quality is when you get to these summer months and the dog days of summer. I think a lot of managers around MLS are talking about this right now, whether through injuries or international call-ups or absences. This is a time where if you're in an NYCFC locker room, you can say, we can make some real ground up here and we can really push things forward, because it didn't maybe always be consistent or a great start. And now you get, I think, Castellanos getting that goal, the like scrappy one in the first match this week, gave him a little bit of something. And sometimes that's all it takes for a striker, is just to get that confidence of just getting the one. And then the next one's a set piece. And then the next one will probably be, maybe one more traditionally you'd see him find, where he gets free in the box and is able to, get one through the run of play. And that's really important for them. I think, low key, Andrade, Thiago has been really big for them. He gives them something totally different, just to be able to stretch the field. And at times when NYCFC have gotten into trouble, I've found, has been when it's a lot of good possession, it's side to side, but it doesn't really have that verticality to them. It doesn't have that threat of really getting in behind. And Castellanos can do it, right? But he also likes the freedom of being able to drop underneath or float out to the wings at times. And Andrade gives them, I think, just that directness. And you just saw on the finish in this one, where it just absolutely burns the Columbus Crew backline, and just turns them around. And at times I've also looked at NYCFC and say, does the style of play that they play at home, does that suit their field? Because they want to keep the ball and they want to play, but that's not always the easiest place to do that. And you can get into trouble quickly. And I think when you look at this team now, you can see they can overwhelm you in a hurry at home. And it can be 2 goals, 3 goals, 4 goals, 5 goals. And when they're all firing on all cylinders, I think at times it was like to protect them because they maybe didn't have that one score. But then when you see them starting to do it by committee, Keaton Parks, I think, chipped in with a goal in this last one too.
Santiago Rodriguez had his first. He's a 21-year-old. We talked about him, Uruguayan attacking midfielder, maybe the heir apparent to Maxi Morales, but nice goal in this one from Maxi, I believe.
Yeah, I think it's that depth in that roster that I think can really help them make a surge and potentially get up into that very top tier in MLS. I think that the ceiling for this team, especially if you mention Eber coming back, talk about depth. I mean, this team could be poised for a really good back half leading to the playoffs.
I mean, the expected goals in this game are absurd, by the way. Like, they scored 3.3 expected goals, even in a 4-goal blowout. That's a lot. And the flip side is Columbus had 1 shot on target. And it was not a first team. There's no Giassi in this one. Artur's gone. The left back, Pedro Santos, but he's been playing there for a while. But this is a week in which Caleb Porter basically asked for more respect and then sort of reeled it back in a little bit and said, oh, but we do need more from our wingers. And then this is the statement that gets made. So Columbus, I think, has to look at this and say, okay, we do have work to do still. Maybe we're not at the level that we want to be.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about how the Gold Cup may factor into MLS. I mean, in this episode, we went through all the U.S. men's national team stuff last night. But when you look at players that gained maybe the most out of the Gold Cup, James Sands has to be near the top as one of the players that got the most experience and got great experience from that. And I think at times he's been maybe a little bit quiet or unheralded with NYCFC, or you've said, are they hiding him in certain positions or places to make him safe and comfortable? But after going through and facing Mexico and their A team, and going against Funes Mori, his confidence and just that experience that he gained from that, I think he's gonna. Sean John's already experienced. One of the top goalkeepers, really reliable. But I feel like James Sands coming back into this NYCFC side, you may see another level of as far as his leadership or just confidence building out of the back. He's always great on the ball, but I think he may have gained one of the most out of the Gold Cup experience, and I'm eager to see how he translates that back to his club.
So
But
let me tell you what's coming for them real quick, Dave. So the big game this month, end of the month, it's home against the Revs on the 28th. Leading into
who
that
they
game,
smoked last game, but Matt Turner was unbelievable.
correct. So they're away against the Fire. They're away against Toronto. They're home against Miami, away against the Union, who are scuffling, and away against the Red Bulls. So that's 4 away games coming up, but that's a period in which they could win some matches and climb the table, building up to that Revs match, and then away to Nashville at the beginning of September.
Although
So this is like not a make or break month for NYCFC, but it is in terms of, are you one of the first or second best teams in the conference?
Although away at Red Bulls is basically a home game after this year. But to Kalen's point, I actually think more important than the teams you said and the locations is the dates. This team's advantage is their depth, and then because of that depth, flexibility. And so they are going to be a team that is better midweek to weekends than their opponents who don't have the ability to turn their rosters around. Like, that's why this is a huge moment, as I think Kalen made it perfectly right now, because their advantage is when it's condensed schedule and games are on top of each other, they have the depth and flexibility to play at a high level Saturdays to Wednesdays to Saturdays to Wednesdays, when other teams will have to rotate in other ways. So that's why this is a huge stretch for NYCFC to probably move up the table and hopefully, they're not going to catch the Revs, but maybe get a home playoff game, show that you are that cup contender.
Orlando's still ahead, and Orlando got 3 points this weekend. The father returned. The father scored quickly. I think we were all extremely excited, or maybe it was just me, and I was like, okay, protagonists, back in this. That's what this rivalry needed. But maybe what the rivalry needed even more was Orlando City to come back twice and win it, and Nani to be that dude. The MVP candidate that he's pretty clearly been for them. He's just been a killer. If you give him an opportunity in a high-leverage situation, he finishes it, or he makes the right pass, or he makes the right decision. This is just Atlanta's fate right now. They're not that good.
No, this is a game Orlando should win. But there was an emotional level to it, the way it happened. You saw Pareja after the game. He goes over, he hugs Nani. Like, you could feel the energy in the building, even though in abstract, Atlanta's bad, Orlando's good. It should be a win. You go down twice, and to come back and then get the winner through Nani in that way, you could feel the energy for Orlando and the direction it was going in. And I think it was an Orlando game throughout. Joseph scores early. Marcelino Moreno scores an unbelievable goal. But I actually thought Orlando was pretty clean defensively, and you can see the energy they have offensively. It's not always gorgeous. It's overloads. It's Pereira covering ground and giving an option. It's, a ton of balls in the box if you need to, and Benji Michel being a pest as well up top. That's kind of Orlando's game. That's what they did in this one. But you could feel for them maybe the acknowledgement of, like, we are on top now in this whole thing. That's what I think they walked away with, is Atlanta was the measuring stick for them the last 2 years, and now it's flipped for Orlando City, and I think that's what that emotion was post game.
Yeah,
I mean, it kind of
Nani flips that script, because even when you look at the goals that Atlanta scored, those are like back-breaking goals. It's like right away, Joseph, and he's in your face in the crowd, and you're like, oh man, because there was, he hadn't been around, and so you could say, okay, well, like now that Joseph is back or is getting back into form, or at least against Orlando, he knows how to find the net, and then the Moreno strike as well. You're like, oh man. But Orlando stuck with it, and Nani has been incredible. I just feel like, he somehow they ask me about him on Sky all the time, just because of his experience at Manchester United. But whether it's midweek, just the consistency that he's found, and the in important moments he's been so big for this team. Um, it's been an amazing DP. So I don't know. I mean, coming through late with the winner there is big. Um, I think if DK can find his form and come back to Orlando and maybe set aside a little bit of this national team, stress or whatever, transfer rumors and all that. It's been a really busy time for him. But coming back and just getting back to business with Orlando City, if he can find his form again, Orlando is going to be in really good shape.
Sylvester Vanderwater in this game changed it. Absolutely. Gets the game tying goal to go 2-2 and then sets up Nani as well. And that's what we're talking about with this midweek weekend stuff, right, Dave? Which is you have quality. Okay, Chris Mueller, he's gone at the end of the season. We know that. That's fine. Get the most out of him as you can. Okay, but here comes Vanderwater to change the game. Here comes DK back. Pato. Oscar Prejas says is closing. He's closing. We don't have a timeline yet. I know
Wow,
you're
Joseph
smiling at me.
scored and Patos close.
I know
Weeby's having a
it's
week.
heaven. It's heaven. It's heaven. Can we talk about DK real quick? We felt it was inevitable. It sort of seemed inevitable. Like all the way the news was going, the way his form was going, the way his profile was rising. It doesn't feel as inevitable that Daryl DK makes that move. And maybe I'm feeling having a little bit regret here of us sort of tongue in cheek, not making fun of Oscar Preja for being like, yeah, he's gonna be back. Can't wait for him to be back. He's gonna be with us. But it sort of feels like that is maybe the likelier situation now through the end of the year, is that he's with Orlando City. Is that just me swinging wildly to the other side? Or is there real doubt here as to whether or not he moves?
He didn't do himself any favors in the Gold Cup, right? If you were looking at clubs, if everything Orlando's been doing is trying to push that number higher by saying all these things and then playing him in Orlando and saying basically, well, he's not going anywhere, which for clubs bidding says, okay, we haven't done enough. We have to go higher. He didn't go to Gold Cup and push that number up, which might mean, as you say, for Orlando, it's not worth it to sell him right now. There has to be an understanding, and I think Kellen Acosta is a good example of momentum. Now, DK's only played professional soccer for a year. I think you could have a conversation with him and say, these are the things we think we can help you get better at. This is how your pathway can look with Orlando and then on to that next level.
Or maybe the offers coming in for you, if they're there, we haven't even heard any confirmed ones necessarily, are not the right club for you in this moment.
Now, in saying that, Orlando doesn't have a huge history of selling players overseas. Kyle Larin was its own thing. Chris Mueller is now leaving on his own. So there is that level of proof of concept, as we've talked about with the Rapids. We've already talked about with Dallas. LAFC is kind of experiencing it, which I think they should take advantage of, especially as it feels like they've reset their academy. And I can tell you from watching those teams and the way Pareja is treating them like he did in Orlando and Colorado or in Dallas, that academy is starting to churn out players that they're going to look to sell. I think DK should be the lead of that, but he didn't affect the game enough in the Gold Cup. It wasn't just about the scoring or lack of scoring. It was when needed. He couldn't hold the ball up. His runs didn't pull center backs out of position, and he wasn't strong enough to hold center backs off to hold the ball to allow his team out. And so those are the things that you look at and you say, okay, a team buying him knows that his touch has to improve and they're going to work on those things. But if he can't affect the game now, then can he be a starter at that level for a lot of these teams? And if not, then that number goes down. And then it looks like, okay, maybe it makes sense to come back to Orlando, show that you can play at a high level, maybe in the playoffs, and then move in January.
I think a lot of it comes down to confidence too. It's like there's always, technique is a funny thing because it can vary wildly. Like even if you are, I think now ultimately the truth comes out, but when you're buzzing and you're feeling good, that technique is there. And I don't know what his injury situation is, but I know he hasn't had much of a break, and he's had to play, a ton of games. And his game relies on some level of physicality, where he's really needs to mix it up to be able to feel good. And if you're worried about getting hit because your shoulder isn't right or going down, you're not able to really use your body the same way or make the same runs necessarily. And it just throws you off just a little bit of an inch or two. And I think that's his confidence seemed really shaken as the tournament went on. And credit to Greg for sticking with him as much as he did. And I think at the end, recognizing maybe that he wasn't the right position to come into this match where Gyasi could sort of suffer through it and find his feet, and he really put in a pretty heroic shift there in the final. But it is tough when you go abroad and you think, okay, maybe you're going to get a move and, it doesn't quite pan out. And then now you have to come back, and the pressure of just playing each match. It's a part of the development, right? It's a part of understanding that you might get a move. You're in the shop window. This could really raise your value, but you don't feel your best and it doesn't quite work out for you. That can be really tough on a player. So I don't know. I think from Orlando's perspective, their history is a little bit the other way, where they have hung on too long or they've missed the moment. And so to me, it feels a little bit like this isn't over. And I think um, Daryl's a different player than maybe Chris or Kyle, or just as far as, attitude, or he seems maybe happy to be there, whereas Kyle really wanted out. But I do wonder if they missed a little bit of a window where when you see a player and he's doing well in MLS and there's interest, and then you get in the window and you go to the championship and you score a ton of goals, that feels like a really good time to find a team and take that money, because then the next guy, you can put that back into the side. So I feel a little bit like this was one of those where you take a bit of a gamble and you say, well, he might just blow up even more and the price tag might even get bigger after the Gold Cup. And that clearly didn't happen. So, I don't know. Well, it's a really interesting question to see, does he move or does he stay? Because if he doesn't find his confidence soon, it actually could get a little bit worse, and maybe he's out of the lineup here and there. And that could be even more damaging.
So,
Trying to get that move.
I agree with you, Kalen. I think the other piece, though, that we don't think about enough or talk about enough with these moves in MLS, and I think the Revs are a clear example of it, is there's also value in winning MLS Cup this year. If Daryl Dike is the best center forward on the roster, which is a position of need, that's not James Sands could be here or not. NYCFC has 2 great center backs and 5 great central midfielders. This is a position of need. If they are best with him, even if that number comes down when you do finally sell him, is the club better off for the way the process went? And so I think we have to bring that in, especially for a club in Orlando that's won 1 playoff game in their history. Like, we have to bring that part in. And I think that's the conversation with the Revs. People keep asking, Bruce, is Tejan gone? Is Matt Turner gone? Bruce came to win MLS Cup for the Crafts, and he's going to do that over the course of this year if everything stays healthy, and he can. And I think those players are a part of that. So there's that part with Daryl Dike, which is, I don't know, I'm going to throw out fake numbers. If the offer was $9 million, if they can get 5 or 6 or 8 in January and win with Daryl, is that the calculation that works for them?
Yeah, it's how do you measure success? Like, what is your measure of success as a club? And for New England, it's clearly to win MLS Cup. But they also need to balance that with getting value for their players, keeping your players happy, frankly, and also getting more players to come to your club. And Orlando is still a little bit stuck in between, where I'm not sure there's just all about MLS Cup, or that maybe this is still their year to win MLS Cup. It feels like they want to build to it. It definitely feels like it's a club with huge ambition and is trying to throw everything, and there's a lot of pressure from the fan base. So I understand that part of it, but you have to balance these things, because when you have super talented young players, you also have to get that value. They've missed it on a couple times before, and you just hope that they're not going to miss it again.
Maybe the difference here is that with Tejan, and with Turner probably too, the heat got turned up. You know what I mean? The market's bubbling. They're seeing that, like, confirmation bias that you see in these performances. Like, is that player good enough? Well, your brain says yes. Right now with Daryl, it's like, well, we're figuring that out once again. We're recalibrating. But the nice thing is, he goes back to Orlando now, to a nice, comfortable cocoon where Oscar Pareja has already proved last year and through the last year that he understands how and when to push the buttons with Daryl when he's ready, and how to motivate him. And honestly, Daryl seems to play the best when he's that, like, gregarious, fun-loving, happy, I'm going to try it, I'm going to run through you guy. And if he can find that again in the next 4 months, maybe again, then we're looking at in January and saying, okay, well, our hand-wringing post-Gold Cup was just a natural development curve of a 21-year-old forward who's been a pro for a year.
Yeah,
just a normal blip in the road where he's played a ton. He's been all over the world. He's done it in the middle of a pandemic. It's been an incredibly difficult time for all of us. Now imagine you're a new pro dealing with the rumors, the the is he in or out, the what's my future look like? Do I have to perform in this game to get the move? Did
But
I? Okay, how do I emotionally deal with the fallout from that? So I'm looking forward to seeing him be back in Orlando. And if they have Pato come back too, maybe that makes January more palatable. But right now, it feels like if Daryl's there and healthy, he is their best option at center forward. And if he's got Nani and Pereira and Vanderwater and Mueller and Benji and all these guys around him, they've got a real good chance of making
but
a run.
all the guys you named are wingers, and look at him against Costa Rica, and that U.S. team was dangerous with wingers. And in England, it was a lot of crosses that he finished. This U.S. team didn't have a single winger on the field until Paul Arriola came back from injury, and he wasn't super dangerous out wide. So I think there's also the element of I don't know that this group fit Daryl Dike's skill set, and I don't know that he's experienced enough yet to be able to get over that or to be able to dominate without that. So that's the other part of hopefully what will happen in his confidence going back up.
Everybody just like, dang, this is a Daryl Dike show.
Yeah.
And we acknowledge that. We acknowledge and embrace that. Hey, how about Atlanta United? They're looking for a coach. Paul Fonseca, you know him from Roma and from Shakhtar. That's a good extra time reference from back in the day.
So
What's
maybe he could coach in MLS. We're
Yeah, who
unsure.
knows? I don't know. Shakhtar, bottom of the table in MLS. We all know
I
that.
forgot about what a time
Apparently,
to be alive.
he was linked with Atlanta United. I'll never forget that moment in the green room. Just sitting there and looking, all of us looking at Doyle and being like, what the hell are you
Not
talking
only
about?
that, I used to go around to stadiums and people at some point would just be like, Shakhtar?
Like,
And
how
you'd be
could
like,
you?
oh,
That was one of those.
man.
There are certain takes that just embed themselves in the
Yeah.
culture. That was one of them. Paul Fonseca, you know his name well. Big time manager, looking for a job. Sounds like he's going to stay in Europe to look for that job. Atlanta United reportedly had him tour the facilities, and he was made an offer. It sounded like for about 2.5 years. He said, I don't think the time is right for me. So they're back to the drawing board. Also, Fabrizio Romano reporting that Thiago Almada transfer fee has been agreed. Now it's on personal terms. Also, that Atlanta made a bid for Ricardo Horta. Yes, that sort of Horta, that family, just the older brother. And now there's reports for Orlando that they're out for a 18-year-old number 10 out of Argentina, Facundo Farias from Cologne. Let's start with the Atlanta side. What is it with Atlanta when they lose a head coach or let him go that they're just like, we got a lot of money in this wallet, we got to spend it? Like, what is going on with Atlanta United? Like, what do you make of this, Kalen? Is it just trying to find like a rudder for this project, for this team? Like, is it just the acknowledgement that any coach you find is probably not going to be the sort that you're sitting there saying he's going to be there for 5 years? Like, we've got to have the squad for him as opposed to get his squad for him as they did with Gabriel Heinze. Like, what is the mix here for Atlanta United?
Well, when you look at their hires, it's pretty consistent that they're going for top name managers that have, much bigger experiences than managing an MLS, and that worked for them tremendously the first time. Tata Martino, and it's hard to break that cycle when you see what that works. The same thing with their player profiles, as far as the players that they go out and scout and the players that they're linked to, and that's also they've held on to that. Now they did take a significant turn as far as going to Europe and looking originally to Frank de Boer, then tried to sort of come back with Heinze. But this fits strictly similarly into, coaching Roma. And then you see Fonseca, I think, was looked at Tottenham. And so Darren Eales has the connection there. So you see, okay, right, that maybe makes sense as far as understanding what he might be like, or you have inroads or connections or conversations with people. But yeah, all the questions of thinking maybe my old manager Dom Kinnear was going to get the job, probably not looking so likely now. Just because it's looking like they have a very, sort of high profile manager in mind. Now, the risk with that is that those managers come in and they're not just coming in and saying, oh yeah, I'm happy, I can work with your group or I can work with everybody. At times you find it's my way or the highway, especially with these big personalities. And it's ended up at the highway earlier than they would have liked in the last two. And now they find themselves sort of finding their footing again. So it is a riskier move to do that. And this next hire feels almost like the risk is compounded because of the last two haven't worked out. And then you're starting to have questions of, keeping Joseph and keeping everybody happy and
I mean, is the
things
squad
moving
good enough?
forward.
there was
Yeah,
a like post Tata into Frank DeBoer, it was like, yeah, the squad
So
is more than good enough. You are
so
going to come in and you're going to compete for trophies because that's the group of players we have. That's the expectations. That's the recent history. Well, the recent history and the group of players is not the same. The
the
level
term
is not the
the
same.
term good enough is not the right term, right? We have now proven in MLS that you should be competitive with any group. I'm sorry, Anthony Hudson, that's your legacy. Is like you could say your team's not good enough, and then the next manager comes in and is more competitive than you are. Should they be an MLS Cup team? No, but
is Anthony Hudson though? Real quick, wasn't he on the side? He's
Yeah,
on
he's an
the
yeah,
assistant.
okay. So put
he's a
some respect on his
U20
name.
coach.
He's oh he was there last night though,
Yeah,
helping
he's
with
the
the
U20
subs.
coach,
Yeah.
so he's working
Okay.
as an assistant for Greg. Uh, I don't know that I want to put that. Don't bring
All
me
right.
into
Sorry,
that
I don't
place,
want to
Caitlin. I was in a good mood.
sidetrack.
I was feeling good about U.S. soccer and all that stuff again. Please don't bring me back there. Shout out to Chicago Fire legend Gonzalo Cigares, though, doing things with the U17s. But the legacy of that is that's an unacceptable answer. The roster for Atlanta is good enough to be competitive. The difference and the issue is Kalen mentioned the three coaches. One of them built his roster for the way he wanted to play, and the other two inherited and then affected transfers. And as much as you could say Frank DeBoer got his signings, Frank DeBoer didn't know who Mateus Rossetto was before he got to Atlanta. Like he gave profiles of players, and the Atlanta front office went out and got the players that they could to fit those profiles.
And I mean, remember Frank DeBoer when Julian Gressel was traded, for instance, was sort of like,
Yeah.
I don't think that was a great idea. Like, I would have rather had Julian Gressel.
And Heinze was able to bring in players that he knew from Argentina, but Marcelino Moreno was already on the roster, wasn't a piece you could move. So they are now following the same trend and not just looking for a successful overseas manager, but also saddling them with a roster that's fully loaded. And you have to be smart about making sure that the manager wants to work with the pieces that are there. Because if the manager has ideas of this is how big picture I want to play, and that fits what you want, and then he gets there and says, well, none of these players can do the things that I need, then you've already lost again. And that's the lesson you have to learn, mainly from Heinze, but also from DeBoer is what is the process of setting this manager up in your club? Clearly, Heinze didn't have the support, the guidance to understand MLS rules, to understand the culture and environment, and to understand what he could affect with the club. And clearly, Frank DeBoer, I don't know, had a bunch of other things going on as well. I'm not even going to get into that. I guess they both had other things going on. But like, that's the worry for me with Atlanta is you let Heinze go, and 7 days in, you've got Paulo Fonseca interviewing. You're rumored to sign another big time player on a roster that has some long term contracts now because you just signed Ibarra, you just signed Sosa, you just signed Franco. And where is the flexibility for the next manager to come in and make it their team? And if it's not that, is a guy like Paulo Fonseca really right? Like if you're telling someone your job is to come in and make the best with what we have, then it feels like the type of move where maybe it isn't a successful assistant in MLS who's kind of willing to take that on, knows the ins and outs of this league, can get you half advantages because they know the tendencies and flaws of a Kyle Smith or, Tati
Wow, they just hit
Castellanos.
Kyle Smith with a
I know. I was just
spray
trying to
right
think
there.
of
Kyle Smith
players in
just
the
enjoyed his Monday
conference.
morning. Just ping, just
Respect to
ping.
Kyle Smith. He's had an incredible
goal.
season for Orlando. Yeah, and a big goal. So I think that's what's worrying for me with Atlanta, and I think for fans, that's what you're seeing is a broken process that feels like it's just continuing.
Where it's the question of, are the people making the hires understanding the squad and the culture that they're bringing this other guy into and understanding how that's going to fit in the right way? And that hasn't happened in the last two managerial hires. So we'll see what happens then. What about this 18-year-old for Orlando? It makes sense to me. They got to get younger in the attack. Got to
And
find a way. Mauricio Pereira's on the wrong end of 30 and has had fitness issues. When he's on, he's incredible. But you might want to have a succession plan there. And really, the same thing probably goes for Nani, too. And that's why I think when you look at Daryl DK staying, that's a reason why they might want to say, okay, well, we need you to be here for a little while longer because we need a little bit more youth in that front four.
yeah, and they had to. Pareja's first job was to get them up to an MLS standard. Now it's to enter MLS, whatever number we're on, 6.0, which is signing young players that you can sell on as well as being successful. So I think this is a sign of Orlando kind of, they've established their base. Now they're ready to step into the next era of the league under new ownership.
Big win there, 3-2 for them. Philly drawing Chicago 1-1. Not a great period for Philly. Vince Devine says, "Where, why has the Union season gone off track, and do they need to do what do they need to do to fix it?" Well, this is not what they were hoping for. Jamiro Montero is a DMP against Chicago. And Jonathan Tannenwald is reporting he's unavailable. He's looking for a transfer out of the club. His family has not been able to enter the U.S. to see him. That's all via Jonathan Tannenwald. And Tom Bogert reporting via the comments of Jim Curtin that, yeah, Jim's not going to talk about it, but yeah, this is ongoing. This is an issue for them. Kalen, what would losing Jamiro Montero mean for the Union?
It would be tough. I mean, he's taken on more this year with Brendan Aronson's departure, and um, he's a guy that he's
He
taken
was
on.
he was emblematic of sort of the shifting of the club, right? When they made that signing permanent after he was so good on loan, that was sort of one of the not the earliest, but one of the early signs, like statement of intent, seriousness. We're here to win, and we will spend money to do it.
Yeah, and
And
it
one of their
wasn't.
best players.
Yeah, and it wasn't. It still felt like a good bargain. Like, it didn't feel like they had overspent crazy to get him. They found really good value out of him, and he's been a big part of their success and bringing them their first trophy. Now it goes the same thing of just keeping a player happy, moving on. I do think that with the system that they have with young players coming up, and they're sort of, I guess, just we talk about knowing who you are as a club, and what are your goals. How do you measure success? And it does feel like Philly would be willing to put in young players, and give them a chance to play. And yes, losing one would be tough, and Montero is a big part of that puzzle. But I do feel like they would be comfortable in a way, moving on from him.
I think Gazdag is part of that, right? Like they have that succession plan in. This is unfortunate. This is just
Leon Flock, Luis Bueno. I mean, they're bringing
yeah.
in pieces.
No, this sucks, and I don't think there's any way around it, and there's nothing Philly can do about it, right? It's an international player whose family, it sounds like, can't come to the U.S. He wants to be with his family, so he's looking for a move back. Remember Vincent Noguera as well, unfortunately for Philly. Another
Yeah,
one
I
where
remember that.
it had nothing to do with the club, it had nothing to do with the sport. It was just life stuff. So it sucks for Philly. I think he'd be a bigger loss than Brendan Aronson and Mark McKenzie were for his level of consistency, his flexibility, what he does for this club in this moment. They're fifth in the East. This is kind of where I thought they would be this year. I think they can beat anyone head to head. I think they can contend in the playoffs. But I just think it's a thinner roster than it was last year to try and fight at the top of the East. So I'm not too worried about them overall as a club.
Yeah, they have dropped a little bit here. They had that nice run, but I think it's like, I don't know, one win from 7 games right now for Philly, and that's not exactly the form that we were hoping for heading in soon into CONCACAF Champions League. And certainly we were not hoping they would have Jamiro Montero out and not available for that one. Luis Bueno did go official for the Union, so we'll see how they do there. How about this one from Brian Leach, Chicago Fire? Should they pull a Cubs and just sell everybody this year? Is there one thing in particular that would fix this group?
As a Met fan, I understand that reference because we got one of the Cubs players. Go baseball.
Nice.
Hardball. It's an interesting question. We haven't discussed it that much this year, but they brought 14 players in, not last offseason, the one before. Most of those were 2-year deals with options. So that's not actually even necessary for this team. So Gaston Jimenez is going to be a free agent in this offseason if Chicago wants him to. Sekulich as well, Alvaro Madron, Calvo, Kappelhoff. So a lot of
Frankowski?
Frankowski as well. Yeah. So a lot of these players, Baric, if they want it to be.
Stojanovic, I think.
Yeah. Otherwise, I think Stojanovic, because he signed this year,
Oh, okay.
is through 2023. Ali Sada's through 2023. But the point is, that's not necessary. Like they kind of set themselves up in a way in which, if they do choose to kind of reset the roster here, there's a ton of flexibility and they can do it. And most of the guys who are longer term, 04, Ali Sada, they're younger pieces that you can work around, especially with the 22 under 22 rule. There's a decent amount of flexibility. So Chicago has, I think, a decent roadmap forward. Like you can pick the pieces that you think have been successful. I assume Baric would be one of those to keep, but you have a ton of flexibility to hit big with DPs and readjust with some of those mid-level spots. It doesn't take a ton of work to try and trade guys out or sell guys to get off their
Yeah, but the problem is who's coming in, right? And I look at this roster and who are you building around?
Weeby, you said you were tracking the young striker, right? He's coming next year.
Yeah,
How's he
yeah,
doing?
yeah. Durant is coming next year, and but
Okay.
he's like, he's going to be 18 when he arrives. He's starting to score goals in Colombia, but like, yeah, he will be a. But you want to bring him into the right environment. Is this the right environment? If you're turning the roster over yet again,
But
and
look
again,
at
I
ML
look at this. I look at this group. Who is like? Who do you build around?
but look at MLS and look at if you bring in two legit DPs, how it can change an atmosphere for a player. So if it's not Gaston Jimenez, which I don't think it is, I just don't think he covers enough ground to make up for his ability on the ball, but not that much goal scoring. If you bring in a stud in central midfield, we have seen what it does in MLS for a team, right? So it's not that far off. Like, and especially if you have some pieces under Rafael Vicky who understands how you want to play that you're bringing back, so it's not another whole reset.
But who are? That's my point. Who are
I,
those pieces?
I
That's the
don't know.
problem. I don't know that they have those pieces. Ollie
Oh,
said
that
it
you keep.
wildly.
Well, Barrich has been successful. Barrich has been a successful signing in MLS. What do
They,
you have?
they
14 goals last year?
absolutely, but
I'm less
they've
worried
just
about
never
Barrich than I
gotten
am the center back,
they've never
outside back,
gotten the balance
central
right.
midfield. Like there's
The
just
Yeah.
balance of MLS experience and domestic players as well as international players, that balance has always been off. And they came in and they said, all right, we need MLS experience. They go out and get Dax. They get some guys that have played that you can build around. They had some international tie-in quality, like Schweinsteiger, but then the sort of TAM level signings didn't hit, or they didn't get the right balance right. And then it's like, all right, we don't really need, the domestic players or even the ones with MLS experience that they've brought in, like Calvo, who's supposed to take a bigger role with the team.
but like
Hasn't
a Bornstein, that's a short term signing. Ohmsberg, it's not a high enough level. He's not an everyday starter for a playoff team in MLS. I mean, like it's just not the. Erber's good player, not a might want to stay down low in that wall next time, but probably not a starter for a playoff team. Could be, but more on the fringe. Like, I just don't know what the foundation is here. Like, you have to have that to bring in those two players that you're talking about, Dave, to elevate the group. I don't know. I just don't see it with the Fire right now. We'll see what happens this offseason for them. How about those signings for the Galaxy, though? Ryan Raveloson, they were like, look, you weren't a goal scorer before, but you're going to come to MLS and you're just going to bang bikes. Like, you're going to hit bikes. You're going to score every game. Like, it's all good, man. D-mid, deep, whatever. No, you're there. You're a goal scorer now. The LA Galaxy, 4-1 without Chicharito, without Jonah, without Sebastian Lletget. They got a new striker on the way. Sega Koulibaly should be back in the team, you would think, soon. They've got all these new signings that are integrating at different speeds and different levels. Grandsier's starting to look good, and they just absolutely smacked the Timbers. Like, we've got a question here. What offseason hire is doing the best job, and why is it Hernan Losada? Well, Greg Vanny's got an argument there. Between Greg Vanny, Losada, and the other new hires, some of which have already lost their jobs, who's been the best this year, and where's Greg Vanny at right now in your eyes?
I guess it's hard to not say Vanny, right? Like, this is a roster that wasn't good enough. Sorry, I was trying to get the standings up to remind myself. DC's in 8th. I think Losada's done a really good job. It's trended upwards. Andy Nahar at right center back's been like one of the moves of the season tactically for any coaching staff. But when you look at the Galaxy, to do it now, he finally built this thing around Chicharito, and he got him a ton of high level chances in places where he's dangerous, and that was carrying them. To lose Chicharito, to lose Jonah and Lletget in these moments, and to be able to still put together performances, that's huge. So I think Greg Vanny, and when you look at their signings, I mean, this is a guy who played in France, who's closely connected to France. You know how close he's been to these moves. Grandsir, Cabral, Ravelson, Koulibaly, like these were his transfers, it feels like. So he's gotten that right. And he's been able to help them settle in and be dangerous. And you look at when Grandsir has been good, how good it allows Julian Araujo to be. Like if there's a threat down the wing and Araujo can be even one-on-one, if not even into open space, then his game opens up. Villafana has been good. So I think Vanny's probably in Coach of the Year running as well.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. LA Galaxy, big win. Portland Timbers, a little shaky. We had some question marks about where this season goes for them and what Gio Savarese needs to do better. Are you at all worried, Kalen, about the Timbers? Is there any worry where you're at right now. They're outside the playoffs, 19 points. They've got all these injuries, people coming back, but there is a little bit of a, I don't know. I'm not going to say there's an issue generationally, but you do have sort of an older generation that is looking at final chances here, and we would expect them, I think, to be higher up the table, though they have had a ton of injuries. They can't do anything on the road, and their home form can't carry them right now above the playoff line.
I'm actually not too worried about Portland. And I think we talked about it before, but just I think when you that balance of age and experience and then youth and energy is a little bit off right now. And I think when you do get people healthy, I think we saw what Williamson can do in the final when he comes back. I think he makes Fileri better. I think he helps Chara out. I think he's a super important piece for them. You saw even in the loss, Ibobasi gets one goal, he gets chances. You're going to get Blanco back in form, hopefully near the end of the season. ACLs take time to be able to get fully back to your fitness. I think this team is going to figure it out, and they've just had such a brutal first half of the year or more with the amount of injuries they've had, and then the congested fixtures and all that. So I think this team is going to figure it out.
I agree with you. I'm not worried about the squad. Williamson will be big. Blanco will be big. Remember, Bravo as well has been at the Olympics. So Van Rankin's been playing left back. Bonilla's been in. I think you put all that together. This is a competitive Timbers team. To me, the ceiling on this group was always, I don't think Mabiala is an Antonio Carlos, Yaimar, Jonathan Mensah level center back. And Zuparic is nowhere close. That's always been my worry with this group, is just if they don't sit deep defensively to keep numbers in front of them and protect those two, I think there's a ceiling to their success. Mabiala has been hurt a lot this year. So maybe as he gets into form, we start to see the player he was in 2017 and 18 for this group. But it just feels like that is one spot that they are different than the other MLS Cup contenders.
Let's go
If they
rapid
are
fire.
one.
Yeah, I don't know if they are
Yeah.
one right now. That'll have to change here soon. Let's go rapid fire. Seattle was riding high. They were winning with 15-year-olds. It was all good, but yeah, it hasn't been as good since that match for the Sounders. They lose to San Jose this weekend. We have Ben Jammin hitting us up, says the Sounders are famous for midseason reversal of fortune, sneaking into the playoffs and winning the trophy. Could the opposite happen this year? Could they get figured out, continue to get hit with injuries, then bomb out of the playoffs from the 5th seed?
Whoa. Okay. That happened fast.
Things swing wildly, apparently.
That question would not get through if Anders were here today.
That's true. That he would shut it down.
Hey,
Anders
Anders
on
was the one.
vacation, baby.
Anders was the one who wanted us to talk about them being undefeated for the season, and I think since then they're 1-3. So that's on him. No, I don't think so. Nico Ladero is going to come back. Roldan's about to come back. Alex Roldan just returned for this game. There's enough pieces in this team that they're going to be strong enough, even in this game. Like Reed Whiting Baker should have had the opener off a gorgeous move between him and Rui Diaz, and they had enough chances to at least get a draw, if not a win at home. So I don't think that this is a Seattle trend. I just think when you look at the how thin their squad has been over the course of the season, there was always going to be a dip at some point.
Yeah, the blip was coming.
They've been amazing with these absences and injuries. Like to be where they are in the table with Nico Ladero is probably their best player, and missing guys throughout. I mean, that has been the way that they've been able to, I think the average age for this team over the last I think this season has dropped years just based on the amount of young players that they've played as far as minutes go. So they've really tested a lot of young players as well, and they've largely stood up to the task. So I think they're going to be in good shape. I think they're going to have to still weather the storm for the next month or two or a month or so, because there's not that much time left. And then you will start to see the Sounders that we know and Schmetz are beginning to really ramp this team up as they head towards the playoffs.
And then things have flipped here. Revs, missing players for the Gold Cup, big players. Tejan, Matt Turner, they're now going to come back. 4 straight wins during that period. Now top of the Supporters' Shield. Bo and Buxa getting it done. Go to Red Bulls and win 3-2. Yeah, I mean, look, when Buxa and Bo are scoring, we know what Carlos Heel can do. Really the question mark, I think the only question mark with this team is probably center back and who's going to be the partner for Andrew Farrell and how well are they going to play, whether it's John Bell or Kessler.
But it hasn't been an
maybe
issue.
left back.
No, I don't think
maybe
so.
left back.
Why?
I'm
You have
not saying it's
Juwan
an issue.
Jones.
I'm saying it's the one place where you might have a question with this team right now because there's not many others.
Yeah, I don't think that that's a question mark in terms of, okay, how do you solve this to win? It's a question mark in terms of like they both deserve to play, John Bell and Kessler. Obviously, Bell was out this week. Kessler moved up, so AJ De La Garza started in this game, and they still got the win against Red Bulls, which shows how impressive this entire group is. To
Oh,
me, the big
that's a perfect Bruce moment in
for
every way,
sure.
right?
Oh, he loves it.
He's like, oh, I got to
Well,
play AJ
Bruce isn't
Larson. Oh, did
afraid
we get a
to.
win?
Yeah, he's not afraid to rotate center backs too. And
Huh?
even when you look at those old Galaxy teams, he's always rotated center backs. I think I played a final against
Oh,
Tommy
Kalen is
Meyer,
breaking up right now.
Yeah.
and he's
I
That's
thought it
used
was me, and
he's
I was
used
like,
players
I thought so
throughout.
too. He's
David, what a
frozen
big
out. That's
moment.
modern day
So
for you,
I think
man.
that's
Those are
something
just the
that you could definitely
technological issues
see
we got to deal with.
I
continue
do
to
have
happen.
one question,
the
which
I
is
heard him. Yeah, I
overall,
heard
when you
him
look
now.
at
He couldn't
the
talk.
pieces that they're about to get
Oh,
back.
nice.
They seem like the favorites. They've got to be the favorites at this point.
Yeah, I agree. It's
What-
struggle right now for Kalen. He's
what a
just in and
great
out. And you
show
know
for
why that is?
Kalen.
Anytime it's like Bruce Arena's going to handle it down the stretch, he just
Oh,
gets those MLS Cup
no.
flashbacks, and his internet's just like, we
No.
can't do it. We can't hold on to
Don't
you.
do that to him.
I know. We'll bring him back if we can here very soon. How about Vancouver? What do you think of the PK, Dave? Everybody's up in arms. Everybody's super mad. I did instant replay this morning. I said it's all good. For Minnesota United fans to be mad, but I also understand why VAR didn't flag that for review.
I think there's contact in the box from behind. I understand Dahome's not in possession in the moment, but Finley goes through his back and makes contact.
I don't know. Finley's trying to play the ball. Dahomey's not trying to play anything but Finley. He throws himself in front of him. That's why to me it's not a PK.
I wouldn't have made
never
the
a PK.
call. See, I wouldn't have made the call, but it's not the worst call I've ever seen. It's not outside the realm of possibility. But can I skip over this into what a week for Vancouver? It sounds like Ryan Gauld's going to be presented to media as their number 10 tomorrow in Vancouver.
Do we call him Ryan Gauld, or do we just exclusively call him Scottish Messi?
Whatever you want to do, I'm happy with it. And it's happening in Vancouver because this was their last home game at RSL. So finally they get to go home. They don't have a home game for another 19 days, but they're going to train in Vancouver. They're going to get to see their families. They're going to get to be home. And then Cavallini, who came off Gold Cup, was suspended this weekend. So now he's going to come back into this team. Dahome now has 8 goals on the season. This is the best we've seen Caicedo play all year. This has to be the most exciting week of Vancouver's season. And there's a ton of potential for them if they can pick up on this. If Cavallini can come in, do the things Brian White has done well, plus his ability to stretch the field and finish at a high level, and Gauld can get his feet somewhat quickly, it feels like there's a playoff run in this Vancouver side.
Could be. That's what they're hoping for. How about FC Dallas, though? Go to Kansas City, 2-1 wins. Too bad Doyle's on vacation because Paxton Pommel scored in the 3rd minute with his off foot, if he has one. And they rolled it out. Jesus got a goal. Johnny Russell pulled one back. Kansas City fans were big mad about refereeing in this game, but I'm not sure that they had a ton to be complaining about other than the performance of their own team. But it's going to change for Kansas City, too. They've been incredible all season long, and then they're going to get Alan Pulido back, their best player. They're probably not going to get Gianluca Busio back. We're still waiting on that one. He's got a medical he's got to handle. It seems like Reggie Cannon was really letting him know, and Gianluca was like, "No, stop talking about that. Shut up, Reggie." It felt like brothers, man. That was like one of the best moments post Gold Cup victories. It felt like 2 brothers bickering, and that's wonderful to see because that means there's a ton of chemistry there. Dallas, the front 4: Paxton, Jesus, Schoen, and then Ricardo Pepi. Is that it? That's the 4. Do they have to stick with that? That's a young, talented 4. But it means Hara's on the bench. It means that some of those new signings that they made in the offseason, Obrian, etc., Vargas, not going to be in that team.
I think that was the point for Dallas, was to have enough depth that whoever was performing would get to play and not have people have guaranteed roster spots that they don't have to work for. I think this is what they've been looking for. There's not a world in which Pepe's not the starter, even if he's not scoring, just because of his level of work, his level of movement, creating opportunities for everyone underneath them. This is the best Paxton's looked in 3 years now. So there's a lot of excitement around what he can do for this club, especially on that wing spot as he gets confident, as he gets comfortable. So I think this is what Dallas has been waiting for. I don't think, obviously Franco Jara as a DP, the assumption was he'd be a starter, but I think Vargas is a long-term signing, and Hot Air as well. They thought he would hit now, but there's no reason that he has to play if other guys are scoring goals.
Yeah, the
Uh,
youth and movement too is huge. You need like going to Kansas City away and getting a win with the way that they pressure and the way that they come in waves is a big result for them. And I think having that young side gave them a big leg up in this one to be able to try and go out there, weather the storm, and then also punch back. So Pepe, I'm eager to see how he continues his form. He was close in this one, had some good runs that got almost on the end of things. But just can he continue that form consistently? Young players leading towards the end of the season, sometimes playing more minutes than he's used to. Can he continue that form towards the end of the season? Definitely one to watch.
He had that
away,
run where Jader Obrian tried to. It's like Pepe took a long touch. Maybe it was a pass. And Obrian comes in and tries to chip the goalkeeper, and it goes just wide. And the look on Pepe's face.
Yeah, he's like, "What?"
He's like, I was gonna bury
Yeah,
that.
don't touch that.
Get it out of here.
And you did that? Yeah,
Yeah.
I like
big week
that.
for Dallas. Away to the Sounders, and they're home against Austin. Big week for Austin. Sebastian Drusi is in. They think he could be available this week. It's Houston, and then it's Dallas for Austin. So keep an eye on that one. Midweek action coming your way. We'll be here on Thursday to break all that down and talk more about Drusi. Hopefully, he makes his debut and these Copa de Tejas matches as well. Let's talk for Houston. Corey Baird. 750K in GAM 2022 international roster spot. LAFC clearly needed to make some moves to open up space to bring in Arango, which they haven't announced, but it seems like they will announce to get that striker in. So now in a week, it's Mark Anthony Kaye and it's Corey Baird, and they just traded for Corey Baird earlier this year. That was 500K and a 2021 international roster spot. So they upped that by 250. That's nice business for them. And it seemed, Corey Baird's a good player. He was not the answer for them in the end. And they have been in the past willing to move on for big outlay trades. Like Christian Ramirez is sort of the key example, and that was an LAFC to Houston as well. So the business between these two clubs has been pretty brisk.
I would say Walker Zimmerman's probably the key example,
Yeah.
right? Because Christian Ramirez wasn't good.
I'm saying
for
one
them.
that didn't necessarily work in the way that they had hoped
got
for.
it.
Because Walker worked.
Yeah.
He was a Defender of the Year candidate, etc. They just felt they could replace him. Corey Baird to Houston. That to me fits what the Dynamo are trying to be. It's like you look around the league, you're like, oh, okay, Corey Baird to Houston. That makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, I love this move. Now, in fairness, I love the move to LAFC because I think it's a similar role where you have that front three that's pressing pretty hard. The versatility is huge in rotations on the field, not just where he can start, but where he finds the game, where he can pick up play. I thought it would be a really clean fit at LA because of those same reasons. It didn't work out. So that could be a miscalculation about Baird's game, or it could be that the confidence he gets from maybe being guaranteed more time in Houston is key for him. For LAFC, it's interesting. I think you look at them and it feels like one of the things that's made them successful is their depth with some really good contracts and roster spots. Mark Anthony Kaye being a domestic low end player, Corey Baird being a domestic player that can give you a ton of minutes. Guys like that were what allows them to go big on the other pieces. Yeah, and have the stability. You've now moved away from Mark Anthony Kaye and Baird to bring in an Arango who's a foreign TAM player. So I wonder for LAFC if it's a win now move or if they believe the academy is ready to push those players in that are playing with the Vegas Lights under Cherundolo, that maybe they don't need to bring them externally from MLS anymore. Either way, I think, again, this is a win-win move, similar to the K trade. I think Houston needed more pop to their attack. I think they needed a guy who could fit into what Tab wants to do. Think about what Tyler Pasher's done. I think Baird's a very similar player. And then for LAFC, they get this money, although most of it's coming next year, which I think is pretty interesting. But they are able to get the spot where they believe they have the guy in Arango to be the final piece.
I mean, that's good timing. Yeah, you put $100 in my wallet, I might go out and spend it tomorrow. But if I get it next year, I can't spend it till next year. So maybe that's good for them.
From a Dynamo perspective, I really like this. I just think when you look at the signings that they've made overall, you can see a clear picture or vision of the type of player that they want to get. And they've gone out and hit on most all of them as far as, the guys like Fafa or Rudy or Corona or Parker and these guys, Pasher, that can really play. Most of them are pretty versatile players, high energy players. Baird can play multiple different positions. You saw in the first match how dangerous he is. Didn't finish. think that was maybe an issue with maybe LAFC and why it didn't quite work out. They're expecting a bit more, although I do think he was productive for them. I think for LAFC, this is more of maybe a sign of them looking to really upgrade and getting as much value as possible, less than a commentary on how Baird fit or didn't fit into their system. I think he was a productive player for what they got him for. Now, I do think this is good for the Dynamo as far as just having more pieces, right? Because the way they play, especially, is demanding. And so to be able to at times say Fafa's not on, now you can push Barrett out to the left, or if he needs to go lead the line as the number 9, you have a bunch of different pieces that you can move around in different spots. And I think this was a good. It didn't come at no price, but I do think it was a good price, a good value pick, and a good fit for the Dynamo.
We've seen sort of Colorado Rapids be a team that does this too, of saying, hey, our allocation money is actually better utilized as essentially an interleague transfer fee than it is to go out and sign a TAM player or what have you that we don't have any guarantees is going to perform. Houston know who Corey Barrett is in this league. They know he could play all 3 positions in that 4-3-3, left, right, and center. So I like the move too. Ventura Alvarado to Inter Miami. We got to talk Inter Miami. I absolutely buried them when they were on their losing streak, and then they beat Club de Foot Montreal 2-1. Gonzalo Higuain had 2 goals. Yeah, I mean, that's a step in the right direction, right? I don't have much to say about it other than I'm sorry that I'm not sorry, actually. It was justified, the dumping. But hey, when things get better, you got to mention that as well.
For sure. Also, broken clock, right? Twice a day, so we don't know what that is. But I think this Alvarado move is, listen, so far, the pieces that Chris Henderson's brought in haven't been the issue. So I think there can be a level of trust for this fan base going forward, that there's an understanding of what they're doing. The problem is they are saddled with what has happened in the past.
Yeah.
They'd gotten beaten pretty bad, I think, twice by Montreal in the past. So to come back and get a good result, and like even the midweek result where they drew after the 5-0 shellacking from New England, they've gotten a draw at home and their first home win. It's pretty late in the season for that, but at least you can say like it's signs of a pulse that this team hasn't given up fully, and that that they've at least stuck together, because it wasn't pretty, right? Even if you look at the goals, it was like a scramble, sort of a poor save, I would say, on the second one. But they haven't given up yet, which it looked like in the past they had.
Yeah, it definitely looked like they had. And the way Neville was talking, it sort of seemed like he thought they had given up a little bit as well. Now, the thing that I still look at with this roster, though, is that we talked about with the Fire of sort of like, who are you building around, medium and long term? What is the basis of your roster? And this, again, feels like another move that's sort of like a here and now. We have to be better than this. Our credibility is at stake, as opposed to a super long-term plan. But I think that's just where they stand. When you have a roster with Matuidi and Pizarro, TBD on that, Higuain Bros, Leardam, Shawcross, LGP across the back line, it's not a young group. You're starting to try to get it done now. So we'll see what happens with them. Let's get to the mailbag and get out of here. 401-206-0MLS, Extratime at MLSsoccer.com. We have a legendary email from David and Stokey, apparently. A Wikipedia update, Dave? What's going on there?
We talk about things. David's a doer. Kalen Carr mentioned his Chivas USA days nowhere on his Wikipedia page. So if you go to Kalen Carr's Wikipedia page now, you scroll past his 18 appearances and 12 goals for the Orange County Blue Stars from 2004 to 2005. Past
Shout
the
out
Chicago
to the
Fire
Blue Stars.
Dive,
Legendary squad.
into the Houston Dynamo years. There is a sentence now that says, while playing for the Chicago Fire, Carr participated in an off-season friendly playing for Chivas USA against their sister club, CD Guadalajara. Carr drew a penalty as the two sides drew 1-1.
Now,
Wow.
I want to know if David and Skokie went back and got the facts, like watch the highlights, or are we just straight trusting Kalen on this?
No, he does. He because he linked to something.
Oh, nice.
No, because the thing he linked
annotated
to,
it as well. That's some good wikiing.
but the thing he linked to is highlights of a USA versus Canada game.
Oh,
I don't
that's
know
a
how
false
this
flag.
is connected. Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Kalen, did you play for Canada in a national team game I don't know. It links directly to this year. He said he did it during halftime of the Gold Cup final because he was feeling nervous and needed something to do. So, yeah. Hey, Kalen, did you know the movement is on your Wikipedia page as well? Post-playing career
That's
since
great.
2016 has worked for
Kalen just
various
shocked.
shows.
Let's not go
is
too
it really?
deep.
I had no idea. I definitely didn't add that myself.
Yeah. David from Skokie, come out to my men's league game this weekend. I scored 2 goals I might bump it up to 3 because you pad my stats.
Yeah,
Please
exactly. Nobody
add
can
my
check
men's
that.
league stats to my Wikipedia page.
Dude,
Thank you.
Future Collective's on here. Your mom's being a professor. Have you ever looked at your Wikipedia page? This is
It's been a minute.
crazy.
I'm very honored that Chivas USA is finally being recognized. My contributions to that club.
Yeah.
Been a big hole in your career there. Rodrigo Sanchez Chavarria from Minnesota does great work up there. Funny guy, and of course likes Bluey as well. If you're a dad out there or a mom, you'll know Bluey. He says, which MLS player is a Bluey character and why? I didn't think about this as long as I would have liked to, which is like for multiple days. But I'm going to say that Nuhu is Bingo. You guys don't know who Bingo is. Bingo is the younger sibling. Very carefree, just sort of does what they feel.
Wait,
but a very,
what
very
is Bluey? I don't even know.
Bluey.
clearly a
Bluey. It's
children's
an
show.
Australian TV show for kids that's based around the dogs are the characters, but they're humans.
All right.
It's a mom and a
Let's
dad
wrap
and
this
two
up.
others. And
This
then,
is
okay,
too
here's the
much.
last
Let's
one.
wrap this up.
Rodrigo. This I didn't put as much thought as I wanted to in this, but I have Jim Curtin as Bandit. I feel like Jim Curtin is that sort of father leading his young, he's kind of fun loving, a little bit cool, has good sense of humor, willing to put his personality out there, but very supportive and guides the young ones through formative experiences in a really good way. Lets them experience it as opposed to dictating down, but is always down to play and have a good time. So I have Jim Curtin as Bandit and Nuhu as Bingo. So if anybody has any suggestions there, I want to hear about it. I'm always down to talk Bluey. All right. Sorry. Continue. My bad.
No, I think we're good. I think that on that note, that's where you wrap the show.
All right. That's it. Oh, how about Grant Peterson?
How
about Grant Peterson with this one? Is Extra Time prepared for the influx of Eurosnob listeners now that Team MLS has defeated a near first team El Tri?
Yeah, because Eurosnob's normally the thing they respect is a Mexican national team squad as well. Yeah, it's going to be fun, right? The discourse coming out of the game yesterday has been fantastic. It's been a lot of people who knew everything about the world and could guarantee everything now finding ways to answer their way out. Oh, well, his goals per game rate, or the tactics, whatever. It's been really fun to watch. So
My Arsenal group chat is going hard for Matt Turner right now.
Really?
Whoa! That's a great rumor.
There it is. We got a headline. Matt Turner linked to Arsenal. Extra Time says
he can try and slow down Jonathan David linked to Liverpool.
Ooh. That's good stuff. All right, we're out of here. Enjoy your week, everybody. We'll be back on Thursday with Charlie. Yeah, go check out that U.S. Gold Cup final reaction podcast if you haven't already, and we'll catch you later this week. Have a good one. Did you enjoy that? Was that right up your alley? Well, go subscribe to Extra Time wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also check the full shows on the MLS YouTube channel right over here, and you can subscribe to the MLS channel right here. Thanks for listening and watching, everybody.